All right, everybody, we are live again. Remind me not to book back-to-back shows. Not like it's not fun or anything, but it is not fun or anything. I'm just kidding. I love doing this, and I love talking to people, and we got a great guest today. Last night, I had the interview with Dom LaCour, and that was probably one of the most transcendental conversations that I've had. One of the best podcasts I ever had on the platform. And I highly advise everybody to go back and take a peek at that. But we are on a roll this week. We got like 5 shows in the pipeline and people who I've been meaning to do content with and banging them out left and right. But to make this one work, because I really wanted this one, I had to get up at the butt crack of dawn, and I am not a morning person. I am a morning person in the sense that, like, I get up, you know, I get up early every day with the sunrise every single day. I let the chickens out of the coop. I feed the cats. I, drink coffee. I stare into space for like an hour doing absolutely nothing, staring at the wall until I realize what I'm doing. And so today, this is me staring into the wall. Is getting up early, getting the podcast set up, and getting Bree Dail on the line so that we could discuss all these things pertaining to the Vatican and Israel. And this is a subject that I'm very passionate about. As you know, they clip me. The Groiper gangs clip me. I'm probably the most clipped, what they would call an anti-Catholic clip in all of Twitter. I mean, it's that one moment, everybody knows that. I don't even have to talk about it, but it's like hundreds of millions of views on that one clip. They always post it. Remember the Catholic cost when Adam King said this to us and broke our spirits. But, they're just such haters. But I don't hate Catholics. They just take things out of proportion. I love all people. And a lot of Catholics are really invested in the change. There's like this Vatican II thing. And I don't know so much about it. I know some of it, but that's why I have Bree joining me today, because we're going to go deep into Vatican II and Pope Benedict and Pope John Paul II, who was truly an amazing man. Probably the best pope there ever was. There were only 7 popes that were benevolent to Jews. Only 7. And 67 popes made open edicts to kill Jews. There's like 260-something popes total. But out of all those popes, you had 67 who were vehemently anti-Semitic to the point where they were encouraging pogroms and the murder and massacre of Jews. The rest were very ambivalent. They cared, they didn't care, they were, they were more focused on other things in their papacies. But John Paul II to Jews was the greatest friend the Jews have ever had in the papacy. So for us, there's no question about his supremacy as the Pope of all ages. But to Catholics, he also meant a lot, especially to Polish Catholics. He was like the main guy, and I just wish that he was still with us, because he was truly a remarkable saintly man. But after him, there were popes that really instituted a lot of the changes that he wanted, that caused a lot of friction in the Catholic community, as you could tell if you open your Twitter. You don't even have to look far to find Catholics that are upset with the papacy. You got the Latin Mass, you got Candace Owens, and all those crazy lunatics who think that they're the Pope. But without further ado, joining me today, I got Bree Dail from the Daily Wire coming on to talk about all things related to Vatican. Vatican I, Vatican II. We're going to get into the history of things. And understand more, because that's what it's about. That's why we have these dialogues, right, Bree? Like, it's all about
Yeah.
understanding each other more and creating space so that we could actually, you know, not conflict.
Right. And, Adam, thank you for having me. You were talking about John Paul II. I was blessed to be one of a dozen people first out in St. Peter's Square. I was a student and everybody had left for Easter, but I was so poor as a student, I couldn't leave Rome and I was studying abroad. And I found out, I had heard earlier in the morning that he had returned from the hospital, if you remember, and they had said that his kidneys were failing, and at that point I knew that he was going to go downhill pretty quickly at his age. And so I ran to the square and I did not leave the square. So I was one of the first 12 people. I was interviewed by George Stephanopoulos.
Wow.
I have photos all over the press. We had press like literally in our faces. And by the end of the first day, kind of vigil of him, like the square was filled. And I mean, I was there for the entire thing. I was there for his death, his funeral.
Wow.
And then, and I will tell you, I've never heard St. Peter's Square be so silent. It was, other than COVID when there was no one there, um, you could hear a pin drop
Yeah.
when they
He
shut
truly
off
was
his
beloved.
light.
He truly was a
He
beloved
was,
man.
yeah, yeah. I mean, he was
And he was
lovely, but
beloved to everyone, not just
yeah,
Catholics. That's what made it so special. That doesn't always happen with the Catholics, where that
yeah, he really
somebody's.
changed a lot of things with regards to how the general public in the digital age, because we had TV then, we had internet, how the general public was able to actually meet and greet and see him. I will say, as we begin this conversation, not every pope should be engaging with the press and people on a regular basis. That's my opinion. There used to be that
So you don't
within.
approve of Pope Leo blessing Sarah Stock's wedding before?
Well, he wouldn't have known. That's the thing, is that you feel bad for him because he
Yeah.
ends up getting these like, photo
That was crazy.
opportunities done. It's nuts. I mean, but that's on her. One of the things that I think you'll really appreciate as we get going, and I do think that as as we continue the journey of having like Catholic, Judeo-Catholic conversations, which I absolutely can't wait to do with people of goodwill, because obviously Catholics and Jews are going to disagree on the Messiah, okay? And we're always going to do that. So we're just going to put that aside for a second and just look at all of so much of the culture and traditions that Catholics have taken from Judaism that many Jews don't even recognize until we start to talk about. And then it's like, whoa, mind's blown. Like we have so much more that we have in common than what separates us, which goes to what St. Paul writes about in Romans, right? So like the Jewish religion is the tree and we are grafted into the tree, not by anything that we do, St. Paul says, not by anything that we did. It was fully on the grace of God that we've been grafted into the tree, and that unity cannot be separated. It's not like Islam. Islam has no foundations within Christianity, other than taking bits and pieces. Muhammad did, and we'll go into that. But with when it comes to Judaism, there's so much more that unites us than separates us. And the fact that we're seeing Catholics right now vehemently embracing the protocols of the elders of Zion, not knowing history whatsoever, it's
Wait, who
blowing my
was?
mind.
Say the protocol. What is about the
The
protocols of the other Zion?
there are a lot of Catholics right now, when we're starting to see on X, especially young Catholics, who are trying to embrace traditionalism, or like orthodoxy, as we say, like going into more of that sense of the traditional Latin Mass, the smells and bells, all
Right.
of the pomp and circumstance. What is being manipulated right now by individuals such as the excommunicated Archbishop Carla Maria Vigano, who is the spiritual director of General Flynn.
Mm-hmm.
So he is also a very, very close conspirator with Alexander Dugin. He has been platformed multiple times. Alexander Dugin is known as Putin's Rasputin,
Yeah.
Putin's brain. So when you start to see that connection and you start to hear um, propaganda being pushed out against Jews in particular, you start to see the connections between the Orthodox churches, supersessionism, and the protocols of the elders of Zion. It's like they're not making anything new up about, Jews and this
No,
conspiracy
they're
and the
just
blood libels.
they're resurrecting like the most archaic Jews put
It's
baby
if
blood
you
in the
read the
matzah type of
protocols,
thing.
have you read the protocols?
No, but some of my friends' families are in the protocols, and
Really?
specifically the Bellsbergs, who are like some of the most amazing people I've ever met. I even dated a Bellsberg,
So
and
do you know that the protocols were propagated in the early 20s throughout
mhm,
Europe as a discovery of an authentic document, and it was through the New York Times discovery of its forgery and its origin being in within the USSR prior to World War II, that's when it was exposed. But by then, most people thought that this had been, who had read it, had thought it was an authentic document that was like exposing some kind of cabal. And this is what
Russia
we're now
for
seeing again.
Russia for all
Russia.
intents and purposes in the modern age is not an anti-Semitic country, but it uses anti-Semitism to divide the West. I said
Right.
this with Dom last night. I said the two things that get people into the streets in America are a cop killing a black man or Israel Palestine, something to do with Jews. The two things that stop traffic in the United States. Raise your taxes to 98%. Nah, you're going to go to work the next day. Talk
Right.
about the Jews. Kill a black man by a cop. Black on black crime, nothing. Cop killing a black man, a million people in every city. It's just like such pre-programmed, you know, and Russia knows this very well. And Alexander
Yeah.
Dugin is a pro.
They
I
exploit
I
it.
call
They
Dugin
exploit
the
it, Adam.
architect.
He is.
Dugin is really the architect. And
Yeah, we have to talk about that article that the tablet just put out because it really goes into Dugan's background. Why is there an archbishop, a former archbishop, because he's now been excommunicated, who is directly tied to General Flynn and that group? Why is
mm,
that archbishop being platformed and collaborating with an occultist and a Satanist?
yeah.
You have to ask yourself, like, he's trusting it up. Dugan is trusting it up as like some kind of traditionalism, some kind of anti-enlightenment movement, but it's bizarre to think that there are people who claim themselves Catholic who don't even know what Dugan believes. It's not like this is a secret.
They say they're Catholics, but really they're the synagogue of Satan. I'm just
Stop. Like, but do you know what's really interesting is also, Adam, looking at how this is dividing MAGA. So when you start to look at Dugan
intentionally,
and
because that's the only way that
intentionally,
Democrats can ever win this after everything
exactly.
that they've
And
been
it's not
through.
just the Democrats. It's not just the Democrats. So
Mhm,
our adversaries, both the Chinese and the Russians,
mhm.
um, they recognize that a united, patriotic, diverse MAGA is is an existential threat to their idea of multipolarity. And they had hoped, Dukin talks about this, they had hoped that Trump's America first agenda was going to have him withdraw the United States back in towards isolationism, which would then create a vacuum, which would allow them to expand their influence. So why are they right now? Why are they attacking MAGA so hard? Well, the left is captured.
Mhm.
We've seen that. The left is fully captured. They are fully ideologically bought by Neville Roy Singham and the individual. And we see that type of activism. They don't even know what they believe. They're out in the streets protesting ICE, right?
Mhm.
But the Republican side deals more with reason, and so we are going to see them throw the wrenches within the fissures in a different way, and it's going to be through distrust of the government. And that distrust into the government is very clear, specifically after COVID.
Hmm.
right? So they're manipulating the mindsets of people, and they're dividing and conquering. Dividing and conquering is what they're seeking to do right now. So the whole idea of Judeo-Christian West, that whole concept, not Islamic Judeo-Christian West, not Abrahamic West, Judeo-Christian West, fundamentally is being overridden by the supersessionist division class of that coming from Russia, but this kind of alternative universe of orthodoxy and conservatism.
Hmm. Yeah, and I expose a lot of it on the show. I wrote in my book about this certain sites, Eastern Orthodox sites in Israel that are just Jewish sites that have been, repurposed, like the Church of Mar Sabas, which is probably one of the most significant and important sites to the monarchy of Judah, because it's actually the entrance to this place called Tehom. But they
Mm,
do these. I wrote about this in my book Od Shiloh on chapter 14. I give the location to the entrance of this the underground dams of Hiskiyahu, the king of Judah, the 21st king of Judah.
mm,
And he dammed the rivers, the four rivers that flow out of the earth, so that Sanherib would not live in Israel, and he went back to Babylon after he conquered the northern tribes. They dried out the land and turned it into a barren desert, but it was a
yeah.
jungle originally.
Hmm.
So this Mar Sabas church that I talk about, a lot of these Eastern Orthodox, they practice like forms of necromancy. Like they have ossuaries and like the touching of the saints' bones, and like they'll have like
Well,
a
it's
pinky
not
finger.
necromancy, but I've seen what they've done.
They
It's
take
not
like a
so
little
much
pinky
aggravating.
finger and they all touch it. Like it's like, oh my
Yeah,
god,
I've
that's
seen
so
it. Yeah,
dark.
well, within Catholicism, we also have saints, and we have their relics as well.
Do you touch
It's a
their
very
bones in
different.
Catholicism?
Oh, yeah, I have I have
Whoa.
relics.
You touch
Okay, so
like the dead
we
bones of like a pope or like a saint?
I have.
What do you think it does?
Well, I mean, I've seen, for example, like, we'll talk about one particular saint, Pope, it was Pope, Saint Pio, Saint Pio, I can't speak today, Saint Padre Pio.
Hmm.
Padre Pio of Pietrelcina, he is an incorruptible. So this is going to blow your mind. Are you sure you want to go
No,
down
I,
this
I
rabbit
know who
hole?
this guy is because I study this. Like his bones
Yeah.
are like on tour. Like, like they're like
Yeah, well,
they're
no, it's
like
not his bones, his body, because he's incorrupt. So he's not corrupted. Like it's not like he's been preserved. He died in the 19 I think it was in the 1970s, maybe early 80s, but he was in the Franciscan tradition. He's a Franciscan. They don't preserve their bodies, and
Hmm.
yet he's not corrupted. So
So he
he's like
didn't
his body's going around.
deteriorate. He still looks like he was the
No, like
day.
there's certain parts of his body that's like, okay, you probably need to cover that. Like his hands are not like his hands are kind of black in color. So it's not, it's yeah. It's the weird part. Don't even like get me started into we have a the Capuchin Franciscans, in order to make space for a monastery, were told that they had to move the Capuchin all of the Capuchin uh, bones and their because they had a fairly extensive cemetery, and so what
Mhm.
they did was they actually repurposed them for a chapel in Rome. It's called the Bone Church in Rome, but
They
this
made a
goes back
church
actually.
out of bones.
Yeah, and they have
How
written
is that
on the
not
wall out of
necromancy?
bone. Out, it's not necromancy. I'll talk about it in a second.
What?
Out of the bones, and written in there, it says, "Who we are now, oh no, who you are now, we once were. Who we are now, you will become."
That is like some straight up Conan the Barbarian stuff right there. That is
No,
so
but this actually
crazy.
comes from Old Testament, where the Valley of Dry Bones, and the resurrection of the dead. So we believe in the same
Ezekiel
thing.
37.
Yeah, so we believe in the same thing. So we don't actually we believe that our bodies, even after we've died, are still sacred temples. They are a temple of God. That's why we choose life over death. This is why we believe in pro-life, that every human being is made in the image and likeness of God. And so those who are living in holiness and in virtue, we actually recognize that they're like vessels of God um that have the ability, whether in life or in death, to be able to bring grace. We also believe that, like in a life after death, and so we believe that we're part. It's not like we become stagnant when we die; that we actually see God face to face, as Moses did, right? And in that sense, like we, because of him, just like Moses received the glory of God on his face and he had to hide it because of under a veil, because of the just the glory and the fear that people had, like not being worthy to even have the glory of God. We're not stagnant. We're seeing God face to face, and yet we have a great desire for our brothers and sisters who are still living, who have not yet made it to that glory, to also do that. And so they pray for us. They're active. It's like it's family. They're family. So the saints are family to us.
So this is
It-
this is
yeah.
the reason why the red heifer is so important, actually.
Mm.
You know,
Okay. So tell me about that.
because you're allowed to like touch a deceased person. It's not
Mm,
forbidden.
mm.
But when somebody's alive, their soul's animated.
Yep.
Look how easy it is for me right now. I'm like lifting right now. Just on my own, I'm lifting 172 pounds like nothing.
Yeah.
Try lifting a dead body that's 172 pounds. You got
Right.
that
It's
dead
not
weight. It's so
right.
easy. My soul is so powerful that I could literally lift the 172 pounds without any stress at all. Just
Yeah.
whoop, 172 pounds. I can like literally jump and like touch a basketball rim and like,
Do you ever find yourself, Adam, like sometimes just when you're like praying and meditating, being like, what was my first memory? Like, do I remember, like, what was that like? Because, like, I'm in the present and I'm seeing and talking and thinking. But there was a time when that was not something, when, our souls were not in our, not fully it was fully in the mind of God, right? And
we'll
we
get
can't remember that time.
we'll
It's
get to that.
fascinating.
I have something that I'll point out, but the thing with the red heifer I want to
Yeah.
really elaborate on, because the when you touch a dead body, the soul is so magnanimous that when it's vacated the body is left with this vacated space,
Right.
where it's called like a klipa, like it's just the shell
It
of
is a shell.
the harboring of the soul. So when you touch it, you receive a specific level of spiritual impurity. And so what the red
Oh.
heifer does is it resets the person. The red
Mm.
heifer ash mixed with with water that comes out of the side of a mountain, sprinkled with hyssop, which is like the za'atar plant. And it's not really a hyssop; it's a form of hyssop. And this combination, it's called the Makif Mavet. When you touch a dead body, you become enveloped into this energy of death. It
Mm.
permeates the being, and it almost like, have you ever been to a funeral and you like have like that melancholy feeling that lingers? That's like the energy. And so the red heifer is here to like purify that. So like when people go and if you want to go touch a saint's body and rub it in its bones or something like that, afterwards you should do the red heifer. And I made the red heifer. We
See,
did the
so
sacrifice. I had the
yeah,
ashes. I made the
yeah.
maihatas, and I'm sprinkling
And
people. So you should come and get some sprinkles because you touched all those
so here's the
bones.
thing. Here's the thing. Because we believe that Jesus was the Messiah, he took on that in our belief system. So this is where we separate from Judaism in this, that he was, if we truly, let's throw this out there. If we truly believe that God chose to deign to incarnate himself in a man during time, and that because of the sin of Adam and the blood cost of the sin of Adam, God chose that the only way for salvation was to pay that price by himself in his mercy. There is nothing that we can do to earn that. Number 1, that's fully God's, mercy. And 2, nothing could come close to taking on the sin of the world and fully purifying us. It doesn't mean that we're not cooperating in it. And frankly, it's so interesting because during Easter in particular, we renew our baptismal promises. And during that time, we say the psalm about, "Have mercy on me, Lord." The Psalm 51, "Have mercy on me, Lord. In your kindness, in your compassion, blot out my sin. Oh, wash me more." This
Mhm.
particular the psalm. And in that sense, David talks about the cleansing of you being cleansed by water from hyssop, right? So I'm guessing that that was probably what he's talking about, correct?
The
Or is hyssop used
mechatas,
in
yeah.
another? So it's interesting because we pray that during our the sprinkling of holy water during Easter to remind us of our baptismal promises. Again, when we are baptized, it's very similar. I've had conversation with Haya about this, that when we look at baptism, what and I'm sure you've seen this too, that baptism for Christians is the mikvah, right? It's the mikvah. We
Except that we
believe that,
go like every day and you guys go like
right,
once a lifetime.
we once in a lifetime, because for
How come you
us,
guys don't go every day?
right, this is a good
You
question.
should.
So for well well for okay, so let's backtrack for a
Because
second
just like
first.
the soul can become clean, the soul's always clean. Elohani shemashina tatapitor, it's always pure, it's always clean. It's the
Right,
body that can become dirty, and it's the body that needs to become clean. So we take mikvah whenever we need. And this is one of the things that like
right.
clearly Jews and Catholics disagree on, is that like this, and this is one thing that I don't understand. I think there's a certain sense of lazy spirituality in it where people
Mm.
think Jesus came and replaced the old law and therefore they could go eat roadkill and eat bugs and stuff like that.
But he didn't say that, actually. What did he say? He said, "I came not to abolish the law, but to fulfill the law, and not one tenet of the law would be fulfilled until everything would be done in
Right.
accordance with
So if
his
he
will."
came to fulfill the law, doesn't that mean that he, like for instance, like he kept kosher?
Yes, he did.
So then if he kept kosher, why don't Catholics keep kosher?
So this is where we go into the book of Acts, because that's where that was the first, truly the first council of that it was with the apostles, including Peter, James, and Paul. Paul was already ministering to the Gentiles, and he was facing a real problem because within Jewish tradition, if someone was to convert to Judaism, and i.e., they believe that this was the fulfillment of Judaism, messianic in its accent, they would have to be circumcised and be kosher. And so the first council of Jerusalem, the Synod of Jerusalem, was violent in its back and forth between deciding whether or not all of these new pagans who were coming into the church and learning the traditions and believing that Jesus was the Messiah, whether that they would have to take on the burden of the law. And so we could
So
go
when
into
in the
deep.
Torah that it says this is an eternal decree,
Yeah. It's
that all
interesting
the
because,
laws and the statutes, and the truth is
right,
they're not applicable to Gentiles. Like Gentiles could eat roadkill
yeah,
and bugs if they want. They're not
right,
required
and
to
they
serve
did,
God in that capacity.
right. And what was the covenant of God between the Jews and him, which dictated the necessity of the law? What was the basis of the covenant?
He
Why did that
married
take
us.
place?
These
But
are the
what
laws of the house.
Right.
We're the
But
wife
what was
inside of the
the intent?
house.
What did he say? What was the intent?
Well, the intent is to really teach human free will. Because in the Garden of Eden, when God made man, he created man as one creature, both male and female parts. The original Adam, the first Adam,
Yeah.
had 4 arms, 4 legs, an eye in
What?
every direction, a ear in every direction. It was all seeing, all
Sounds like
knowing.
a seraphim.
No, it was this was how God, when it says B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God, what it's saying is that this idea image of God, in Hebrew B'Tselem Elohim, it's more like we are the species of God.
Mm,
And when he created us for a purpose,
mhm,
and the purpose is embedded into Genesis. He doesn't speak to us
mm.
directly because of the sheer vast nature of his greatness over
Right.
our smallness. Like, I tell people all the time, Christians love doing this. They're like, I saw an angel. I'm like, no, you didn't. An angel's like a 70-story building in size. Like, you didn't see an angel. You had an imagination of like a winged human, and that's not an angel. An angel's like Godzilla on steroids. There's like 1,000 eyes, 6 wings. They're like 72-story building.
Oh,
It's
the
a
wheels
terrifying
are really
thing.
interesting
So if
when
an
they talk
angel
about the
came to you
wheels.
looking,
Yeah.
like if Godzilla came to you like that and it was like, do this, you'd freak out. You'd live the rest of your
But
life in an
don't you
insane
think that
asylum. And that's only the
God's
servant of the king. The king is
yeah.
so much bigger than that angel, and that angel's terrifying. Some of the angels are so terrifying. They like, why did God create them so terrifying? For his purpose. We don't know. It's above
Yeah,
our
we
pay
don't know.
grade.
Yeah.
But anyways, all the angels bowed before man, and I'll make this story short because it really shows what God wants from us, why the laws are important, like you asked. And so he says, Lo tov le'ot adam levodo. It's not good for Adam to be alone. So he creates
Mm,
all these creatures and all these things for Adam to dwell with. But in the entire sequence of the story, man doesn't turn to God and say, I'm with you. So then God separates man, cuts him in half, fills the back of with flesh, limits us to 180 degrees, and then says, Al Kenya azovish et dimo v'debek v'ishto. Therefore, man will leave his father and mother, and he will be devek to his wife. And
mm,
in this is the secret of all of creation.
mm.
Did Adam have a father or mother? No. He
Did
wasn't
he have a belly
born.
button?
He actually, previous incarnations did, but this one didn't. Actually, the first 5 incarnations of Adam, there were 5 versions of Adam that God created before he created us in this
Mm.
sequence 5,786 years ago. But those 5 were analog. The belly button was permanently connected to the earth. But this is like deep Kabbalah. It's not basic. We shouldn't talk about it in public.
No,
But
I think that it's funny because I do think that these things are, it's not like this is all new questions that these things like I just can
yeah,
imagine
God
Jews
didn't
sitting
make us in
around
like a suburban
debating this.
laboratory. We're talking about like some deep spiritual
Yeah.
technology here. It's other world. It's so much more science fiction than it is our modern world. And it's mystical. It's completely different than the modern world. But to finish this story, he says, Al Kenya zovisha devivet imo v'devek v'ishto. Therefore man will leave his father and mother and cling to his wife. It doesn't say cling to his wife. It says davek beishto.
Cleave.
This
Yeah.
word davek that they translate to cling, it really means spiritual adoration for God. So it's very
Mm,
strange. God's like, you
beautiful.
shouldn't be alone. And then man doesn't turn to God. So God separates man, creates this longing, and programs man to love God the way that man
Through his
loves
wife.
his wife. And in this is the
Wow.
secret. God created us to be his wife, to be his
It's
spiritual partner. But listen to
it's
this. This
so
is where it
fascinating.
gets mind-blowing. Okay, Bree? He
Mhm.
says he create but in order for that to be fulfilled, we have to leave the consciousness of seeing him as a parent. Al ken yazov ish et aviv et imo, his father and mother. Don't see me as your parent. See me as your lover.
Yeah.
Because we were created, we were like on day one. We were like a baby. We were like Abba, father, mother.
Mhm.
Like we saw God in that parental light. And all of
Mhm.
human history is really just us maturing to the point where we can look at him and approach him like the wife we were created to be for him. And so
Right.
the Torah and all of the 613 laws of the Torah, the 248 things that you do when presented the opportunity, and the 365 things you don't do when
Don't
tempted with
do.
the opportunity.
Right.
This is God, the greatest mercy that God gave us. The intention of the law was God saying, this is what I would do if I was in that situation. Be like me. And if you become like me, you will have the perception to see why I really created you. And when that time comes, when the Messiah comes, we both believe the Messiah is coming. We believe the Messiah is already here, always here, never, reincarnates.
Yeah.
You guys believe is came and is coming back. It doesn't matter. We
Yep.
both believe that a Messiah is coming. When that Messiah comes, that the world will be ripe to be able to be intimate and to love
Yeah.
God so that he won't be alone in his kingdom for eternity. And the
Yeah.
only thing that separates humans from anything, angels, everything, is free will.
Free
He
will.
doesn't
Yep.
want you to be submitted
He wants
into.
to choose.
He wants you, and that's why America is so holy. Because
Yes.
in America, you could be an atheist, you could be a pagan, you could be a Christian, you could be a Jew or a Muslim or a witch or anything
Right.
you want to be. You can make up your own religion. You could be a Satanist. You could be anything.
Yep.
And you could have reward. And there's no reward for doing good in this world. Doing
Right.
good is the reward in this world. Making the right choice is the reward. There is no you get a birthday cake if you if you do God's will. No,
Right.
doing God's will is the reward. Cuz
Right.
then you get to be wife. But
Right.
he wants us, and it's only through
He wants
like
us to
that.
choose him.
And that's why America is so special to God,
Yeah.
because we get to choose to love God
Yeah.
here. And even in
Freely.
Israel, they're not as free as we are in America.
Right.
So the Jews in Israel, even though the Judaism is very similar, there's a specific nature that Israeli Jews don't necessarily have that
Right.
American Jews really have. It's
And
like
that
that
comes from the
freedom.
different cultures, like the
It's
different
that
cultures that
freedom to
came
be
in. Right.
crazy with God, or
Right.
just to be out there, because we're free. We this is my
Right.
own choice. God didn't make me do this. I'm not forced to do this. My
Right.
parents didn't make me do this.
Right.
This is just
Yep.
all me and him. So that's
So do you
why the
want to blow
law
your
was given.
mind?
The law was given to train us to become his lover, and that is by accessing the higher consciousness of free will.
Do you want to have your mind blown now? Because I
Please.
bet you haven't had this. So bring up a picture of the Baldacchino in St. Peter's Square. It's the Bernini's Baldacchino. It's that bronze
How do I spell it?
Baldacchino. Baldacchino. Baldacchino, St. Peter's. You'll know.
Ball.
You'll
Wait.
recognize it.
Say it again. B A
Bald.
L.
Baldacchino.
Baldacchino. Okay.
St. Peter's. Do you see it?
Yeah, it looks like a chuppah.
Okay. You got it. Because Book of Revelation talks about the wedding feast of the Lamb. We believe what you believe on this. And what is the best
That's
example
cool.
of that
A chuppah.
is that the chuppah is over where Jesus, we believe, is fully present within the
Whose
Eucharist.
grave is that?
So it's not a grave. Well, St. Peter is buried underneath, but that is the altar in which we have the perpetual sacrifice
That's cool. I didn't
made
know that.
present to us. Yep. Isn't it? And it's interesting because when you see Eucharistic processions that go out throughout the streets, they have also a tent with four corners that cover the Eucharist. It's the perpetual wedding feast, and we see that in the book of Revelation. So I want to go back though to the mikvah and your question: why don't we
But
have
before, we
it
both
every
agree
day?
that God wants to
Yeah,
marry us, right? We
we
both
believe
agree
that
that
He is
God wants,
already.
not even just
We
wants to
bel
marry us. Like, I don't want to, I'm going to be a little bit explicit here. Okay.
like consummate,
Like, yeah, he wants
consummate.
to have
Yeah.
sex with
No,
us.
get this. Okay, so when Jesus was on the cross, and the sacrifice of Jesus was fully paid for the sins of man. It's translated, "It is finished." His last words were before he expired. He gave up his he submitted his will to God, but did not die because of others. He fully, because of his will, gave up the ghost, gave up his spirit. But before he sighed and he died, what he said was, "It is consummated."
What it This is where I really feel bad for Catholics, Christians, everybody. Because in Hebrew we have the original language and the original text.
Yeah,
And anytime you're studying and you're reading and everybody's like, this, that, and the other thing, everybody's like, what's the original word? And that's like
right,
where the Kabbalah comes from, is like when you break the word itself, then what are the
right.
letters? Why is
I
this word
know.
spelled with a different,
Do you understand,
like you
Adam? This
can't
is
do
what
that in
we should be
Catholicism. Like
doing.
I just want to know like
No,
what was the actual word he
You
said,
can.
you know.
You can. You can because uh, number one, it wasn't like this. There'll be people who say the scriptures were dated much later, but we believe that like John wrote at least the book of the Gospel of John and the book of Revelation. We know that Luke, who worked and lived with for a time and interviewed, because Luke was a doctor. He interviewed the mother of Jesus, Mary. That's how we have the story of like Jesus being born in Nazareth. All of that, it was because Luke went and interviewed Mary in order to, while she was still alive. So he
Luke
got
had Mary on
firsthand
his
sourcing.
podcast.
Sorry.
Luke had Mary on his podcast.
Yeah, well, could you imagine? Yeah. But I mean, he did the right thing. I mean, it makes sense too, because he was like a scientist. I mean,
Uh,
he was a Greek physician at the time. So that's how we know he also wrote. But it's fascinating to me that, I mean, this is where Judeo-Christian, Judeo-Catholic dialogue ought to be. We should be all like
there's
sitting
more of a
down and having this
Judeo-Christian
type
thing,
of,
and the Judeo-Catholic thing hasn't. You're like one of the pioneers. You, Frank McCormick, some other people. Like really, there's only a few Catholics that are into the whole Judeo-Catholic, and I think we should call it Judeo-Catholic. It triggers the
yeah.
people who hate us, and like there is a Judeo-Christian
Because
thing,
Christians don't
and
have Baldaquinos and you
there's a,
don't, the wedding feast of the Lamb. Like these are things that we can you imagine the graces that God would bestow if we all like, obviously recognize, and this is the letter that I had sent you earlier with what Benedict the 16th wrote with
you're
the
talking about the
rabbi, one of
speech at
the,
the university.
no, he went right before he died. Well, right after he died, a number of his letters were collected and put into a book. And one of those letters was a back and forth between a rabbi, a prominent rabbi in Europe, and himself about the Judeo-Catholic conversations and what issues we're having and how we would go about starting to kind of build this conversation. Because at the end of the day, if we're truly desirous of worshiping God, and we recognize where we disagree in certain theology, but where we have, like, for example, the baldacchino, or where I'm going to blow your mind in a second about the baptism in the mikvah, and where we have the differences. But we're going to also be able to walk away from, every time we're studying the scripture together and engaging in this, we're going to walk away with a more profound like view of God. Like we've been looking at him this way, now we've got another perspective and we see his beauty. And that to me is true worship that we're losing right now from this kind of nonsense about I again, like the targeting of Jews makes no sense to me. It makes sense when we look at Islam, because Islam is like an inverse of both Judaism and Christianity. It does not seek life; it seeks death. It seeks violence. It's as Pope Benedict the 16th said in that address, in the Regensburg address. He quoted directly a statement: "Show me just what Muhammad brought that was new, and there you will find only evil and inhuman. such as his command to spread the sword of the faith he preached. Okay, that was an early Christian emperor in the Roman Emperor, and was he was discussing this thing that we're now having to discuss again, and Islam has never changed. 1400 years, it's never been reformed. It's never sought to change. It spreads its domination through fear. Its view of God is even about
And think
appeasement,
about
almost
what I
like the
said earlier
pagans.
about God wanting us to choose him. Like,
Yes,
God is not intimidated by people who reject him.
nada.
He
Yeah.
doesn't need people to
He
accept him.
sorrows at that. He sorrows at it because he has a true
It's
desire
crazy how much God
for
loves
that
everyone,
unity.
including the worst sinner.
Yeah,
It's honestly, it's so crazy. Like, I have tried so hard. There's people in my life that are so wicked, and
right. That are choosing that.
even wicked to me, and like I
Yeah,
fight myself constantly, you know, to not fall victim to hate
right.
or to anger, because God still, if
God
God
loves
still
them.
loves them, then I should still love
I
them.
should love them. Yep. Same kind of
Even
mentality
though, and
for,
that's what's so hard. That's where free will really takes effect, because it's like,
yeah,
it's so easy to do something. It's not that level of free. Jews, there's we have levels of the 613 laws. There, you have to perform them on every level of this in order to stop reincarnating. You have to
mm,
perform every level, the mitzvah on every level of the soul in every world.
yeah,
So there's five
in world.
worlds and four levels of, I'm sorry, there's five levels of the soul and four worlds. Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, Yechida is the levels of the soul. And
Okay.
then the worlds are Asiya, Yetzira, Bria, and Atzilut. So you got to do Nefesh of Asiya, Ruach of Asiya, Neshama of Asiya, Chaya of Asiya, Yechida of Asiya. Then you got to do Nefesh of Yetzira, Ruach of Yetzira, and every law. So honoring your mother and father could be like, uh, hey, I'm calling to check in so you don't worry or wait up late. That's a way to honor your mother and father. Another way
Right.
to honor your mother and father is literally like saving their life.
Right.
These have completely different magnitudes.
Yep.
So the Torah gives us this system to evaluate magnitude, and Jews were required to do these laws on every single level. So
Right.
not every time you do something for God, it's the same. Loving somebody
Right.
when it's
Of course.
easy is one thing. Loving somebody
Yeah.
when it's difficult, that's when God is really impressed. When
Right. And
you're
we
able
say
to
that
turn
that
off
brings
your
merit.
nature.
Yep. It
Because
says
I
that
want to
we
say
bring
one more thing.
merit.
The
Yep.
opposite of free will, what do you think it is?
Um,
It's going to blow your mind. I'll just tell you.
Obedience.
Nope.
Hmm.
The opposite of free will is nature.
Hmm.
And nature is ruled by the stars and the planets.
Right.
The stars say the grass to grow, and it grows.
Right.
The stars tell a man on this day, on that day, you're going to get angry. He has a
Yep.
choice if he's going to get angry or not. But if he does get
Right.
angry, he becomes in Torah what is called akum, ovde kochavim umazalot, a
I
slave to
know.
the stars and the
Yep.
planets.
Yep.
And that's the opposite of free will.
Yeah, and we talk about this too, where we talk about the higher faculties and the lower faculties. So the higher faculties are the reflection of God's will in and God's image in us, which is your intellect and your free will. Those are the two things that separate us from the animals, right? And yeah, there's certain levels of animals that have some intellectual awareness, but they all abide by their natural the natural law, so to speak. But what separates us is our free will and our intellect. Our lower faculties we call are the passions. There are emotions, our chemical alignment, our physical drive, the need to eat, the need for pleasure. All of these things are our lower faculties. And what we believe is that at Adam and Eve's rejection, eating of the knowledge of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, what they did was that they disordered our rightful order of faculties our higher faculties over dominance and over our lower faculties. And what that means is that we struggle now with something called concupiscence, or the sense of temptation towards the easy thing, temptation towards pleasure,
Mhm.
temptation towards feeding our lower faculties. And what God gave us with our free will in this is that we have can use our free will and our intellect to reorder those lower. That's why we fast, right? We don't
Mhm.
fast just simply because
Fasting is is the highest is so
yes,
high, like the body's hungry, it wants to eat, and you're saying
right.
no. It's
Yeah,
complete
because
domination over the
yeah,
physical.
over the lower
Subjugation
faculties.
of the physical world to the
Right.
spiritual
Yes,
intention of
that's what
free
we
will.
believe. That's
Mhm.
what we believe, right? So, like, we could talk about that in our traditions of fasting and our traditions of feasting, and why God actually gave us feasts. And he wants us to enjoy that life as well, with full union of both our lower faculties and our upper faculties worshiping him. So
Mhm.
we have feast days like you all have as well, where we're expected to we have something called holy days of obligation, where we are expected to go to drop everything in the middle of the week, and really go to mass, and really involve ourselves in our feast days. Now in the United States, sadly,
Dude, I'm not even
we've
kidding
lost a
you.
lot
I
of that.
gained like 10 pounds over Pesach. I'm like,
I bet.
God, I
You
worked
guys just are
so
you're
hard.
made to
I
eat.
worked
I didn't
so
know that.
hard
Like,
to
you have to
lose the
eat
weight.
so much.
Do you know how many fast days it took me? I like was fat. I swear, I do these intermittent fasts and like full blown
Yeah.
fasts, and like I was trying to do 72-hour fasts,
Nope.
losing weight, working out at the same time, like like groggy, and then comes Pesach, and I'm just like, oh, chocolate macaroons.
Christmas and Easter, that's what we are too. Remember, we were 40 days in the desert of fasting. We also, it's interesting because the Orthodox are really intense in their fasting, and they're also they refrain from receiving or eating meat. And so, as that's even more of a fast, so to speak, is like what's left. Even though, like, I did talk with Haya about, like, she was picking up some last minute kosher things, and she found like pie crust for kosher. I'm like, that wasn't in the desert. What exactly is
Well, you
kosher now?
can
You can
here,
even
look, I'm a culinary expert. Okay. People don't know this about me. I'm quite the Renaissance man. I get down in the kitchen and I get down. And I follow this thing called minimalist ingredients.
mm,
It's like a cooking philosophy where you cook. I have Jewish genetics, so I always got to be careful about what I eat for, my digestive tract is very sensitive.
right.
So minimalist ingredients, like if you have a cookie from the store, chances are there's 30 ingredients in it. So minimalist ingredients, I tried everything with 7 ingredients or less. So you'll be
Oh, beautiful.
surprised how creative you can actually get with certain dishes when you have nothing. Like, for instance, almonds are acceptable. Now, you
Yeah.
can eat almonds, they're not chametz, but if you grind up almonds, you could turn it into a very interesting pie crust. You know what
Yes.
I'm saying? So
Yeah,
that's
I
kind of
know
like the
because
modality
I
that
did
Kaya's
keto,
talking.
so, like, I know exactly what you're
And it
talking
is,
about.
I
Yep.
believe, just the opposite. People like to like pearl clutch, like, oh, we had it this way 1,000 years ago, so we always have to have it this way. God likes innovation. God
Yes.
likes it when you have tacos on Shabbos. You know what I'm
Why
saying?
why
There was
wh why
never
does
a
he like
taco
why
on
does he like it?
Shabbos in the Torah or in the Beit HaMikdash. Having
Like,
tacos on Shabbos is like an innovation. God's like, yes,
yes,
fiesta.
because we're part of we're participating in his creative nature, right? So, like, he loves it when we create. And it's one of the things too, we go into like details in the Catholic Church about, like, when we see like leftists today say, like, we need to have control, and we need to be able to limit guns because that limits murders. It takes away the agency and the free will that we have, right? And guns in and of themselves are neither evil nor good. They're a physical object that was created, so that the whole intention here is like, anything that a man creates is neither good nor either evil, according to Augustine. St. Thomas Aquinas, and Aristotle. Okay, so we can look at the natural law as well as
Only man
the
is
spiritual
capable of
law.
good and evil.
Yes, exactly.
Mm.
Right. Exactly. And
You could
so
take an evil
it really,
object, or what is perceived to be an evil object, a gun, a
right, and use it for
sword, or
good.
whatever, and save someone's life with it, use it for
Right.
good. Just
Right.
like
And
what
so
America's doing in Iran right now.
so when you talk about like levels, like in Judaism, there are levels of like virtue, like a thing virtuous, like heroic virtue of saving a life, or like taking care of your parents. Like it can be sometimes very heroic virtue to be taking care of your parents, especially if there's a lot of time that you have to invest. There's a lot of with, especially with people who have dementia, there's a lot of suffering, a lot of sacrifice that you have to do, but it's your obligation, and it's a right mikvah, right? So that you've got that virtue, that merit that you're gaining in heaven. But for us, we also see that in sin. So we talk about there, not all sins are deadly. There are times where, like, a child goes and steals a candy bar at the shop. It's a pretty serious thing for them. They need to understand that thou shalt not steal, but it's not like stealing multi-million dollars worth of cash. One is like you could do reparation pretty quickly, and you can repair that by paying for the candy bar, saying you're sorry, maybe working it out with the store owner. But what kind of reparation is necessary when someone steals multi-millions worth of dollars? And that's where we talk about the gravity of sin. So going back to what you had asked earlier about why is it that we're not, why are we not doing the mikvah every day? Why are we not doing that? In Catholicism, we have confession, and confession is a sacrament to us. And so it is something that we could do every day, but the intent for us is we have daily mass, so we have daily worship every day as well, very similar to Judaism, where you pray in the morning, you get up and you pray. You dedicate your day to God, and at the end of your day you dedicate your sleep to God. We do as well. We wake up, and actually in the monasteries they wake up during the night as well to pray the psalms, and at the night to
Yeah,
welcome
we
the
do that
first
too
fruits,
at
give the
Chatzot
first
Laila.
fruits. Yeah.
You said something really interesting, and it kind of segues perfect into a topic that I'm very passionate about. Your
Okay.
analogy between the child that steals a candy bar versus somebody who steals vast
Multi-millions.
swaths
Yeah.
of money.
Right.
Um, One of the things, the big criticisms of Catholicism
Mhm.
is the hoarding of ancient artifacts and Jewish possessions in the
Mm.
catacombs. So, how do you feel about, because obviously that's theft, like for
Mhm.
instance, I had Rabbi Benjamin Blech on the show who was very close with Pope John Paul II. And Pope
Mhm.
John Paul II allowed him to have access to certain writings of the Rambam, which was
Mhm.
1,000 years ago, which are held in
Mhm.
the Vatican catacombs. And it was largely speculated for 1,000 years that the Vatican, because there's missing segments of the Rambam, so
Mm.
it was largely speculated that the Vatican had them, and Pope John Paul II, God bless his soul, revealed that it's
Allowed
actually
it.
true, that
Yeah.
they do have them, and they brought them out for Rabbi Blech, who's been on this show more than once, and he um, he read them and solved a major halachic, a legal issue because of it by accessing this one book. Now, this
Right.
wasn't a book taken at the destruction of the temple. This
No.
was a book that was from Egypt because
Yeah,
the
preserved
Rambam
from
lived in
Alexandria.
Egypt.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
and
from the
somehow it
libraries.
ended up in the Vatican catacombs. Just like a lot of books from pogroms, like I said, 67 popes have made open edicts to kill Jews. I don't think that they ever intended to kill Jews. I think that they were trying to take books, and Jews were standing in the way. Not to
Mm.
say that these people were, whatever their reasons were, but on that, how do you rectify that type of a theft? Like, do
Mm.
you believe in the giving back of these items to the Jewish people?
Right. So, first off, I want to invite you personally. I will be going back to Rome sometime this year, and we can organize this. I want to take you into the Vatican archives. So they're not the Vatican catacombs. The catacombs are where people were buried. So the Vatican is built on on a necropolis. I can take you in the excavations under St. Peter, so you can see what they're doing archaeologically to so that people can see the excavations. There's nothing being hidden or stored in there. You can't, and you'll see it. But I want you to see it for yourself. Don't take my word. That's where as a journalist, I'm like, don't believe me. Let's go see it. Um, in the archives, anybody, including Muslims, you've got this story that's come out that's now circulating again, but it broke in October of last year, of Muslims getting a prayer room in the Vatican. Well, it's in the Vatican library, number one. These were Muslim scholars, and they had requested a place where they could pray. So there was a side room that was given to them so that they could pray, because they would have to leave the Vatican library, leave the Vatican city state, go and walk to a mosque and pray, and then return back, which was cutting in on their time. For they only had a certain amount of time that they had scheduled in their schedule to be able to access these things at the library. So, like, anybody can access the archives. If you are a student, or if you have a need, it's like the British Museum. If you're a student, you can go and request access to the archives. And I have a very good friend who's a biblical scholar who will take us in, and we could access the archives.
So what about
There,
I'm
there's
happy to
nothing
access
there.
them, but what about like
Yeah.
returning these to the Jewish people? Like, for
So
instance,
there,
those writings of the Rambam do nothing on the
right,
shelf in the Vatican. We would be circulating them if they were released from the Vatican and given back to the Jewish people. It would be an
right.
amazing act of goodwill to further the relationship. It costs the Vatican nothing. It is a stolen object. And the Bible does give us a
I mean,
commandment to
how is it
return.
stolen? Like, how is it
Well,
stolen? If it
let's
was
just
in
say
the
it wasn't
Library of
stolen and it was
Alexandria,
lost. The Bible gives us a clear law to return lost objects to their rightful owners. So whether they were stolen or lost, we don't have to like
or
really
they
get
were
into that. But
so, but Adam, but like the Library of Alexandria that was burned, right? And we have so many losses, like
I don't believe
like
the narrative
historical
on that.
documents.
I think that the
Really?
library was looted by Rome and the Romans took everything just like they took everything from the rest of the world. And the Vatican really is kind of like the Roman storehouses. There's so
Well,
many
no,
treasures
the
from the
Romans said,
ancient
like,
world.
no, like, people believe that the menorah is hidden somewhere in the Vatican. It's not.
All right,
It's
so like
not.
let's talk about the
Let's go.
Rambam book.
Let's go
Let's
see.
just think,
Yeah,
let's say maybe the Vatican only has this one thing. First of all, they have the largest collection of original Hebrew texts in the world. But like
sure.
this Rambam book, like why can't they give it back to the Jewish people?
I mean, I think if the Jewish people asked for that, then I think that
Oh, we
they
do
would
all the
consider
time.
it. But
This
but
happens
take a
all
look
the
at,
time.
like,
This is like a
are you going to
major.
also say for the British Museum, to return all of the museum artifacts to different parts of the world because
It's a
they
little bit
originated in
different
one
because the
place?
British Museum didn't acquire it through conquest.
The Catholic Church didn't acquire these things through
So you're
conquest. I
not
mean,
in
like, we
favor of
have
giving
letters,
these
we have.
back.
But no, I said, I think that if they're asked for, I think that, sure, but
I'm
they also
asking
have,
for
these
them
are.
right. I'm asking for them right now. I
I
want.
I don't have any authority to do anything. So, like, you could, I mean, like, I have no authority whatsoever. So, like, it's neither here nor there. I'm not a citizen of the Vatican,
Well,
and
I talk
I'm
about
just a
this a lot on my
journalist.
show. This is a
Yeah.
very intrinsic issue to Jewish people,
Yeah.
and whether people want to like say that they
Well, let's
don't
go see
exist
it.
or nothing is
Let's go
there
see
or
it.
whatever.
Do you want to? Let's
Yeah, I'll
go.
go.
Let's go.
I would
Let's
love to
go.
meet Pope
And
Leo.
yeah, I mean, we could work on that. I got that for Ben Shapiro, so you won't be the first Jew.
No, well,
So, like,
Shmuley Boteach seems to have all the access in the world at the Vatican. So I mean,
I don't
like,
know about
but I would
that,
love,
but
like, I'll tell you, when my first debate happened with Nick Fuentes, I wrote a letter to the Pope, and um,
yeah, I'm sorry you had to deal with that, but okay,
no, I loved it. That was awesome. I had such a good time.
good,
I hope I have a third debate. I've had 2 debates with him so far.
okay,
But he's changed a lot since the last time we debated, and I'd love to,
yeah,
pick his brain and see where he's at now. But After that, I wrote a letter to the Pope, an open letter to the Pope that went stupid viral on the internet, and
Francis, or
it was
was it
Francis.
Francis? Okay.
And then they kind of like, and then shortly after that, they had that council of bishops in America when they like made those. They like said that they like specifically named the Groypers. It was kind of like a quasi excommunication, but it was done through the Council of American Bishops. I forget the name of that
The
organization.
USCCB?
Yeah, so they
Yeah, I
made
don't know
this
anything about Groypers, but okay,
they
yeah.
made this document, and the document included like things that pertain to like what is considered anti-Semitism, and
Mhm.
like it was 2 years ago. It happened, but um yeah, I feel like very involved in this story of the rectification
Yeah,
between Jews and Catholics, but from a
let's do it.
non-apologetic place too. Like I'm not
Right.
here to just be a pushover and be like, oh, like, yeah, I want these books, I want these assets to be delivered. I am going to build the third temple. What is what it that's we're not going to like live in a world where the third temple never exists and Israel is like the strongest nuclear power in the Middle East. That just doesn't make sense. What's your take on the third temple? Like, are you in favor of the third temple being built? What do you think?
Honestly, I don't really have much of an opinion on this. I like in when we talk about the Catholic Church rejecting dispensationalism and saying, like, very similar to yeah, as a heresy, the Catholic Church recognizes that there is a split between Judaism and Christianity, and if we are going to be true to our belief that Jesus is the Messiah, and he gave specific requirements for the entrance into the kingdom of heaven, then we have to abide by understanding that. But in the mystery of God's providence, um, the Jewish faith remains in parallel with Christianity in time right now. So we don't really have an answer on the eschatological side of the bringing about of the third temple, but it's in the book of Revelation that the kingdom of heaven will be here on earth, and
So you
and
are in
it's
favor
very
of the
clear.
third temple.
I I am, but I don't quite understand how this is going to take place, and if because I am very adverse to human beings, especially Christians, thinking that they can bring about the coming of the return of Jesus by doing something like, here, God is a pinball machine. So let me put this coin in and do these things. And then God has to abide by his side of things. I tend to look at the history of the world that God brings about his will in very surprising and creative ways. And you always look back and be like, wow, that not only fulfilled it, but it over
What a
fulfilled it. Like he
story.
is, yeah,
Right, like there's this prophecy that in the end of days Ishmael repents and
yeah,
apologizes to Israel, and you look at what's going on now with Iran, and it's
yeah.
like I'm watching
How is that going to
Qatar
happen?
and Saudi
Right,
Arabia and Dubai and the
right,
UAE and
right.
Kuwait all go to war with Iran side by side with their brother Israel, led
Whoever
by the
thought that?
father America. It's like such a
Right.
cool story. I did
Like,
not
but
see that coming.
who would have even thought
I
that
did
in the
not see
mind?
that coming. I remember the
No.
Sbarro pizza bombing in like 1991 or whatever. Like, I was such a kid, and I was like, as a kid, first of all, I'm blessed. I was never alive in this life without the state of Israel. So I
Mm,
am like a Jew born in Zion.
mm, mm.
We don't have um, that, that confusion or
Experience of,
abandonment
yeah,
of
yeah,
complete exile.
yeah,
We still have somewhat of an exile in our own land. Like
sure.
Jews are the least free prayer group in Israel. The government of
Mm,
Israel bends over backwards for Christians,
mm,
uh, does everything possible to not upset Muslims, and uses Jewish prayer as like the leverage tool. Like, we are not going to allow Jews on the Temple Mount. We're not going to let Jews do the red heifer. We're not going to let Jews do